faithfully delivering value by exploring great books from around the world. Hi there, this is Sally, your book narrator. Today, we're diving into the groundbreaking book that started modern economics. 1776 was a landmark year in Western history, especially for the wealth of nations. That same year, British inventor James Watt unveiled his improved steam engine, sparking the first industrial revolution and boosting productivity massively. Also in 1776, an economics masterpiece burst onto the scene in Britain, fueling the Industrial Revolution with its ideas. That book is none other than The Wealth of Nations. Right after publication, The Wealth of Nations made a huge splash, becoming a direct guide for British policies. In Parliament, politicians often quoted The Wealth of Nations during debates. Just a year later, 4 new taxes in the UK budget came straight from the book's suggestions. Later, it was translated across Europe, shaping economic policies during the Industrial Revolution. The author, Adam Smith, was born in 1723 in Scotland into a well-off family, got a top-notch education, devoted his life to scholarship, and never married. Back then, academic studies focused on subjects like philosophy and rhetoric. After graduating from Oxford, he became a moral philosophy professor and gained fame by publishing The Theory of Moral Sentiments. But at age 40, traveling through Europe showed him that society's big changes couldn't be explained by philosophy alone. So, he spent 10 years in deep research and published The Wealth of Nations in 1776. The book meticulously analyzed factors in economic development using revolutionary frameworks and terms. This book marked the birth of economics as its own field, setting up the foundation for discussing economic issues. All major schools of Western economics draw heavily from it. Even today, over 200 years later, many ideas in the book are still relevant and worth deep thought. The book has 5 parts. The first 2 focus on the laws of economic growth and lay down core theories. The last 3 parts bring in the state as a factor, examining international trade and government policies. We'll cover this book in 2 parts for you. Today is part 1, where we'll explore the first 2 sections of The Wealth of Nations through 3 questions. First, what drove the rapid progress in industrial society's productivity? Second, how is the wealth created by production distributed among different social classes? Third, how can we ensure the continuous growth of national wealth? Let's start with the first question. What drove the rapid progress in industrial society's productivity? In simple terms, it's one word: division of labor. Smith believed that division of labor stems from a universal human nature: exchange. Humans are born knowing how to achieve mutual benefit through exchanging interests. This trait isn't seen in other animals. When the economy develops enough, many people start having surplus goods and spontaneously trade them for other products they need. For example, in a tribe, there's a person skilled at making bows and arrows. His products are more durable than others, so others trade part of their hunt for his bows and arrows. From then on, he didn't need to hunt himself. He focused on making bows and arrows at home, and his skills improved greatly. Meanwhile, others didn't need to make bows and arrows themselves. They had more time for hunting, bringing back more game daily. Everyone benefited from the division of labor, and this model became established. In the industrial era, social division of labor is also a result of mutual benefit. Everyone participates for their own interest. Smith termed this motivation the invisible hand. Invisible hand. For example, a factory owner, to gain more profit, reinvests earnings into production, expanding the factory and creating more jobs for society. His original intent wasn't to create jobs. Perhaps he never considered social benefits, acting solely out of a selfish motive to pursue profit. But the invisible hand combines everyone's selfish motives into a powerful force that drives productivity forward. Compared to agricultural production, division of labor is more common in industrial production. This is because agricultural production is seasonal. One season is mainly for one task. For instance, sowing in spring, harvesting in autumn. It's impossible to sow and harvest simultaneously, so dividing farmers into two groups, if Group 1 only sows and Group 2 only harvests, it would leave one group idle. While one group is working, the other has nothing to do and must stay idle. Therefore, such division of labor makes no sense and doesn't actually happen. Industry is totally different. For example, making sewing needles involves steps like straightening the wire, cutting, grinding, and dyeing. Workers are split into groups, each specializing in one step. When one finishes, the next can start right away. This way, division of labor can be effectively organized, driving rapid progress in industrial society's productivity. For instance, Adam Smith wrote that in a small factory he visited, 10 workers, after division of labor, could produce 48,000 sewing needles daily, averaging 4,800 per person. And if they didn't have division of labor, each person might only make 20 a day. Why does division of labor have such a huge boosting effect?
There are three main reasons. First, workers' skills improve daily through specialization.
Second, switching between tasks usually requires changing tools and shifting mindset. Workers find it hard to adapt quickly, causing time loss. Division of labor avoids this waste.
Third, division of labor promotes invention of machinery, greatly simplifying and saving labor.
Without division of labor from the start, many machines couldn't be invented, because only when humans focus on a single thing can they invent faster and easier production methods. For example, the original steam engine was very complex and needed lots of manpower to operate. And at that time, a child was hired just to continuously open and close the valve. Later, the child wanted to slack off and used a rope to connect the valve to another part, developing an automatic valve mechanism. If he'd been asked to improve the whole steam engine from scratch, it would have been impossible with a child's knowledge. But in the specialized task of operating the valve, because he was familiar, he could make a crucial improvement. Innovative division of labor is the direct cause of increased social productivity, but it's limited by market size. If the market's too small, division of labor vanishes. For example, in an isolated small village, there's often no full-time carpenter. Farmers do carpentry work because demand for furniture is low, not enough to support a carpenter. But, some of these, as the market size grows a bit, it can support more basic division of labor. For example, a slightly larger village would have a full-time carpenter, but he must take on all wood-related jobs to support himself. And not only making various furniture and carvings, but also agricultural tools like wheelbarrows. Naturally, his skill level in each area remained mediocre. Only when market size continues expanding does division of labor improve, enhancing its boost to social productivity. In densely populated towns, specialized carpenters emerge. Furniture makers, high-level woodworkers, carvers, and dedicated wheelbarrow manufacturers. Transportation convenience is the core element for market expansion. In that era, water transport efficiency far exceeded land transport. Thus, early industrial development concentrated along rivers and coasts, spreading inland as roads connected regions. Division of labor refinement correlates closely with a nation's economic development. As output surges across industries through division of labor, every worker produces substantial surplus goods beyond personal needs for exchange. This expands market depth and breadth, further promoting division of labor. Most European contexts had small territories. Expanding markets sufficiently for high-level industrial division required international trade. Smith noted exceptions elsewhere, like China, though he never visited. From travelers like Marco Polo, he learned China's vast territory featured diverse climates and regional products. Additionally, convenient interprovincial waterways, huge population, and substantial resident demand created immense markets. Thus, China's vast domestic market could support advanced industrial division, enabling strong manufacturing without international trade. When Smith wrote this, China was under Emperor Qianlong's isolationist policies. Yet Smith believed China's economic stagnation merely lacked access to foreign technology. Once mastering foreign machinery techniques, China's vast domestic market could rapidly develop world-leading industries. This remarkably accurate prediction materialized later than expected, as advancing productivity created increasing wealth. This leads to the second question. How is this wealth distributed among different social classes? To answer this, we must first clarify a concept. What exactly is wealth? Many at the time assumed wealth meant gold, silver, and other valuable items.
But 17th century English philosopher Hobbes proposed that wealth isn't objects, but rights. Smith took this definition further.
He advanced this definition even more, pointing out that wealth is actually the power to command labor. Before division of labor, everyone produced all they needed themselves. After division of labor emerged, people delegated production to others to save time for their specialties. Thus, a person's wealth depends on how much labor they can command. Similarly, a nation's wealth should be measured by how much labor its land and total output can command. Important note, this labor isn't about time. Complex labor, like training a skilled worker over 10 years, means 1 hour might equal 10 hours of simple work. 1 hour of such complex labor could equal 10 hours of simple labor. Luxury goods only the rich buy, like intricately carved furniture or imported Eastern porcelain, require complex labor. Buying such goods commands not just production labor, but also complex labor in transportation. Though labor is wealth's true measure, gauging how much labor a product commands is practically difficult. Hence, people use widely demanded goods as value benchmarks. When societies moved beyond barter, gold and silver became universal value measures. Labor-measured prices are real prices. Money measured are nominal prices. Though money's value fluctuates, nominal and real prices correlate locally. Thus, nominal prices can indicate wealth, and product prices decompose into rent, wages, and profit. Some argue industrial production excludes rent, since it's land independent. Actually, land provides raw materials for all industrial products. However, upstream products contain a higher proportion of rent, while downstream products contain less rent. So, land is furthermore, the three income sources, rent, wages, and profits, correspond to three social classes: landlords, laborers, and merchants. First, rent. Those who benefit from wealth distribution through rent are landlords. Landlords provide agricultural land for farming and raw materials like timber, minerals, and energy for industrial production. Landlords acquire land through royal grants, ancestral inheritance, or personal accumulation. Rent equals the portion of product price remaining after subtracting laborers' wages and merchants' profits. Rent distribution differs from profit and wage allocation. Those receiving profits and wages can exercise initiative during production. The smarter and harder they work, the greater their earnings. But landlords cannot play an active role in production. Whether diligent or lazy, a landlord has minimal impact on product value or personal income. Over time, this causes most landlords to become indifferent to production and behaviorally lazy. Thus, Smith termed them the idle class, a group characterized by idleness and laziness. Next, wages. Wages emerged when human society entered the industrial era. In early agricultural societies, laborers owned all products, rent, profits, and wages all went to them. After feudalism emerged, kings granted land to nobles. Laborers became tenants, and rent was redistributed. Thereafter, agricultural profits and wages remained undivided for centuries.
Self-sufficient lifestyle. Farmers self-invested in seeds and tools, cultivated land and sold crops themselves.
Most farmers were both laborers and merchants. Only during industrialization did distinct laborer and merchant classes emerge in cities. Those with initial capital and business acumen became merchants. Those without startup capital relied solely on wages for survival. Marx called them the proletariat. But following Smith's framework, we'll call them laborers. Since laborers and merchants interact directly during production, they frequently clash over distribution. As early as the 18th century, strikes where workers united to demand higher wages were already common. But Smith observed that in labor-capital conflicts, workers rarely won because they had extremely low risk tolerance. They depended solely on wages. And once fired, they'd go hungry, while merchants with savings could endure temporary shutdowns. Thus, wages largely depended on what share merchants were willing to give workers. Still, wages have a floor. They must sustain workers' basic survival. Otherwise, workers starve and the economy halts immediately. Beyond this, maintaining the next generation's workforce is essential to prevent economic decline, meaning wages should allow a couple to raise 2 children. For continued growth, wages must increase to support raising multiple children per family. The key to raising workers' wages is sustained national economic growth. Only when the economy expands and labor shortages occur will merchants raise wages. Meanwhile, higher wages enable workers to raise more children, fueling continued economic expansion. Thus, workers' income depends entirely on a nation's wealth growth rate, not its existing wealth. When a rich nation's economy suddenly stalls, landlords and merchants maintain luxury via savings, but workers plunge into poverty, creating rich nation, poor people, inequality, or finally, profits. Merchants receive wealth through profits and provide initial production capital. Using owned or borrowed funds, merchants prepay workers' wages and landlords' rents before production starts. During production, they oversee and manage operations.
After production, sales revenue minus prepaid wages and rent yields profits. Distinguishing profits from wages requires careful analysis.
For example, when a factory owner performs management work, is their income a manager's wage or business profit? Based on Smith's observations, it counts as profit. The key test is whether income relates more to invested capital or management skill or intensity. In Smith's era, factory workforces weren't as large as later periods, so advanced management skills weren't necessary. Management work contributed minimally to factory income. Negligible, really. Factory owners' income was primarily determined by their invested capital, set by the amount of capital, so this income counts as profit, not wages. The book gives another example: the pharmacist prescribing medicine to patients. Drugs often have huge gaps between cost and selling prices. If producing a bottle costs $1 and selling it earns $5, is the $4 difference the pharmacist's profit? Smith argued that pharmacists require extensive training and bear huge responsibility for patient recovery. In fact, this labor commands high exchange value. So much of that $4 is the pharmacist's wage, not profit. This conclusion stems from another reason: if pharmacies truly had 400% profit margins, capital would flood in, rapidly lowering rates. Some might ask, even if this $4 counts as wages, not profit, the same issue exists. Won't other workers switch to pharmacy when they see such high wages? Actually, no. Switching careers is far harder for workers than merchants. High barriers exist in professions like pharmacy. Long training and certification exams are required. But merchants need no certification since their role is providing capital and oversight, not hands-on production. Does a pharmacy owner need pharmacist qualifications? No, they just fund and hire licensed pharmacists. Thus, in normal markets, capital quickly flows to high-profit sectors, leveling profit gaps across industries, forming a general profit rate. With industries changing rapidly, pinpointing exact profit rates for a sector or company at a given time is hard. But the general profit rate is easily estimated since merchants often borrow for investments, and interest rates are recorded. Long before this book, UK government loan interest was 10%, later falling to 5%. If borrowing interest is 5%, the general profit rate must exceed 5%. Otherwise, no merchant would borrow. Smith made a subjective guess that interest equals half the profit rate seems reasonable. Meaning, if interest is 5%, the general profit rate might be around 10%. Admittedly, this isn't rigorous, just an estimation approach. Now, understanding landlords, laborers, and merchants' roles in production and distribution, let's address the third question: how to sustain national wealth growth. Wealth increases through constant value creation. Among landlords, laborers, and merchants, who creates value? Only one answer: laborers. Landlords contribute almost nothing to production. Merchants boost economies by allocating capital, but capital allocation doesn't directly create value. It must happen through laborers. However, not all labor enhances social product value. Some diligent workers perform non-productive labor that creates no value. Typical examples: aristocrats, butlers, and servants who serve personal needs without adding to social products. Another common non-productive group: state employees, like government workers and military personnel. Smith didn't deny the military's vital role in national defense. He simply reminded rulers that waging wars and maintaining armies constitute non-productive labor. They divert capital from productive labor, harming the national economy. In thriving societies, landlords, laborers, and merchants accumulate assets beyond basic needs, together forming total social assets. Asset usage divides into two types: pleasure-seeking versus profit-seeking. Landlords become idle because they spend most assets on pleasure, luxury goods, non-productive areas like servants or art collections. But merchants differ. They invest substantial assets in productive fields to pursue profits. After accumulating some savings, one can escape wage dependency by becoming a small business owner, keeping both profits and wages from production. At this point, they've joined the merchant class. To sustain national wealth growth, we must reduce pleasure-seeking assets and expand profit-seeking investments. Total social assets are fixed within any period. Pleasure and investment exist in inverse proportion.
Smith argued that without cutting pleasure assets, laborers' diligence alone cannot achieve overall economic growth.
He wrote, "Frugality, not industry, is the immediate cause of increasing capital." How to gauge a nation's growth potential?
A simple method. Examine its ratio of productive to unproductive laborers.
Some European nations then had thriving art scenes, with many artists, but few industrial and agricultural workers, seemingly wealthy.
But Smith believed non-productive sectors like arts couldn't drive growth, making such nations' futures questionable.
Funds for productive labor boost growth through two primary channels. First, increasing the quantity of productive labor. Second, enhancing the productivity of existing labor.
These correspond to circulating capital and fixed capital.
Circulating capital yields profit only through circulation: raw materials, worker wages, unsold inventory.
Profit arises only when this capital circulates, consuming materials, paying wages, selling stock. Hence circulating capital. With fixed startup capital, how to increase productive labor quantity? Answer: accelerate circulating capital turnover speed. If a product takes 1 year from production to sale, merchants can only expand production annually after repayment. But with 6-month turnover, they can expand twice yearly, rapidly increasing productive labor. This turnover concept resurfaces later in international trade discussions. Oh, I know nothing about my own.
Fixed capital yields profit without circulation. Machinery, factories, technology.
Whether it's inventing and improving machines or providing technical training for workers,
Though it requires a big upfront cost, once invested, it can function long-term.
after labor productivity greatly improves over time, it recoups the costs and keeps generating profits.
For continuous economic growth, both circulating and fixed capital are essential.
How to allocate limited funds between the two. How to boost the turnover speed of circulating capital. Which fixed capital investments best enhance labor productivity. These are all issues merchants must consider, and they're key to business success or failure. That concludes the first two parts of The Wealth of Nations. To summarize simply, industrial society's rapid productivity progress stems from specialized division of labor. It's proportional to market size. Productivity advancements create vast wealth, distributed among 3 social classes through rent, wages, and profits. To keep wealth growing, reduce consumption of luxuries and unproductive labor while increasing investment in productive labor. Building on this, by enhancing circulating capital's turnover speed and fixed capital investments for productivity improvements, overall economic growth can be achieved. All right, that wraps up part 1 of The Wealth of Nations for you. Reading notes are below the audio. See you next time.